Hello and welcome to Portugal. We're here on the Yamaha XSR900 GP press launch and I'm so grateful to be here. Is this the retro racer that everyone has been dreaming of and expecting it to be? We've been riding around about 200 kilometers today to find out. I'm going to let you know. So, what is the Yamaha XSR900 GP? I mean, of course, it's pretty obvious that it's the XSR900 with some GP bits to it as well. But basically, this is a 12,506 pound bike. It's got the MT09 engine, the CP3 triple that we all know and love. It's the XSR900 framework. So, of course, put those together, stick a fairing on, you're done. But it's so much more than that as well. And that's something that I really found today that was incredible. Of course, the presentation and the backstory behind what this bike really means to Yamaha really evolved it. It was already high in my estimations, but then it just gave it that little bit more background and history that made it even more important to me. So basically the YZR 500, you've got the Neil Mackenzie racing heritage, you put all of that together, you've got the fairing on there, you've got clip-on bars, you've got an adjusted suspension and rear sets to make it a little bit more racy. It's not quite R7 racy, but it's a little bit more than the XSR 900, so it's a little bit in between. I found really interesting today, of course, me as a tall rider, 6'3", that I jumped on this and my legs got a little bit cramped towards the end of the day, but it was a long day in the saddle. But I felt so comfortable on this bike, and that's really important to note because the XSR 900, I don't feel quite as comfortable. So a racier version of it in this GP was slightly more comfortable, which is really good to see. I will just quickly mention as well that the presentation yesterday, we were speaking to some of the Yamaha guys and we were really given an insight into the production and the long process that it takes for this bike to then reach dealerships. It was started in around 2018 and that's alongside the XSR 900 current generation. And Yamaha did have a bit of uncertainty whether this bike would be worth going for really. Of course, here it is, but there was a little bit of uncertainty because it was the Faster Sons project, or the Faster Sons category of bikes, accounts for about 10% of the motorcycle sales from Yamaha. So naturally, looking at this GP, you'd think, is it worth investing the time, the development, the research, and all of the effort into making this bike what it is today? Thankfully, here it is. I will just note as well that this bike is exactly as I was riding it today. You may have also seen the versions with the lower fairing, the Akrapovic exhaust, the tinted screen, the shorter license plate holder.
And these are all in the Racer GP accessory pack for £2,950, or they're available individually in the extended accessory catalogue for the XSR 900 GP. The lower fairing is also £600 if you're after just that alone.
And that basically turns it into the GP racer that you'd potentially expect it to be. But Yamaha did say that they wanted this to still be a naked road bike. They didn't want it to be a GP replica or something that is meant for track days. Now, we did go to Estoril, but that isn't necessarily what the bike's about. In my mind, and it seems that Yamaha agree, this bike is more about the sort of rider who looks for a stunning bike, something that has performance and the modern characteristics in terms of all the electronics, but then also something that just has the heritage and all bundled into one. That's appealing to three different audiences really. You've got the sort of rose-tinted retro racer fan, you've got the guys and girls who love to have a retro bike, but they don't necessarily want to have the upkeep and the lack of modern tech in terms of ABS and rider modes and traction control. And then you've also got the people who just want to have a really good looking bike that's brand new, modern, but has the heritage behind it. And Yamaha have basically rolled all of that into one and made a bike like this that appeals to all of those markets. One of the things that I've seen today is people stopping, staring, taking photos, videos, asking about it. And of course, naturally you get that on the launch because there's 12 of the same bike around. But this is something that really did sort of take more attention, and it was really nice to see that so many people took a massive interest into this bike. I mean, you start looking closer into the R-clips, the clip-on bars of the little drilled bits, and all of the finer details that really stand out to make this bike really special. Of course, it's the MT09 engine, CP3. It's a triple, and it's got torque everywhere. You've got around about 117 brake horsepower and 93 Newton meters of torque. And basically that just translates into a bike that in any gear it picks up and it responds to what you're putting into it. regardless of the rider modes, it still has that fun characteristic that we all know and love from Yamaha, but just motorcycles in general. And this is something that really, really shone today. Of course, the roads in Portugal are great and we had a really good time, but I can imagine turning up to any sort of biker meet on a Tuesday night or a Sunday afternoon just blasting around the countryside, and this bike is going to do it all. And that's something that the engine is really, really responsible for, just purely because it just picks up in any gear.
Adding to that is the assist and slipper clutch for seamless gear changes. There was no missed gears here at all, and it lets you get away with a little bit of eager downshifting into corners. Speaking of, the third generation quick shifter also features here, and that allows you to shift up or down when either accelerating or decelerating. So you can blip down a few gears whilst accelerating to go for that overtake.
This bike weighs 200 kilograms basically on the nose, with fully fueled and basically everything. And when you've got this bike rolling, it just responds so smoothly. The wheelbase is quite long for a sporty naked, 1500mm.
It's a reworked Delta Box style frame here, which has been tuned for stability and increased front end feedback. Very important for this model. The headstock bracket is adjusted for the GP, and it's got moved engine mount brackets and a thicker subframe plate and an aluminium steering tube, which is the first for a CP3 model, they tell us. The overall geometry on the bike gives that sportier riding feel, whilst allowing for a more upright position if needed, and overall the handling dynamic here is just spot on.
And that just meant that when you're riding along, it felt really stable and responsive to your inputs. The throttle connection, of course, naturally, depending on which rider mode you're in, really just responded to how you wanted to ride it. If you wanted to take it really steady, sitting up a little bit and just, cruising around, looking cool, or trying to, this bike will do it. But then at the same time, you really tuck in, push the bike and really go for it in every gear. In sports mode, it will do it as well. And that's just something that really is special to this bike. In terms of the electronics there, you've got sports mode, you've got rain mode, and you've got street mode. Then you've got custom 1 and 2, and then you can also dive deeper into the menu to turn off, say, wheelie control and little bits like that.
That TFT screen is nice and bright, and you can adjust the brightness as required, and it's easy to navigate with the new joystick switch gear. And if you pair up your phone, you can make use of the Yamaha MyRide app for turn-by-turn navigation from Garmin via that app. So you can switch on the cruise control and sync those miles. It's also worth mentioning you have the new indicator switches here from Yamaha. So basically you press left or right to, of course, indicate left or right, and then you just repress left or right to cancel that. They did say you can soft press to do free indication flashes, but I couldn't quite get that down somehow. So once you get your head around it, it's nice and easy to use. And overall, the switch gear and the TFT screen is really, really good. I really like it.
I was riding for the most part in sports mode today. Did have a little stint in street and rain just to see what it was like. Rain was really nice and smooth. Street was a sort of in between, and sport was just, it felt like full throttle action. I will also mention here, the suspension is something that was tweaked a lot for this bike. Of course, you look at the XSR900, it's a little bit more sort of 50-50. This one wants a little bit more weight on the nose to give you that race feel. Of course, with the clip-on bars and the slightly raised pegs, that just meant that when you're fully tucked, you feel like you're in that racer position. But as I say, you bimble around town and it will still be nice to just sit up and take nice and smooth. Very responsive bike. And the suspension is a lot to do with that. You can adjust the preload at the rear with an easy twist dial, and you can also adjust the front suspension here. And if you really want to dive into it, get it set up for track potentially, then you can do that. As it came to me today, it was perfect. I did try and wind on the rear preload to make it a little bit harder, and when the road was a little bit twisty, that did work nicely, but not necessarily required, because in any case, it was doing very well. The rear part is actually a pillion seat. So if you're looking at one of these bikes and you're thinking, oh, there's no pillion for my other half, this bit here tucks in, got a pillion peg, and this rear cover lifts off, and underneath you've got a seat. Sort of rear holes here expose the seat a little bit. And it's something that is quite nice as a feature. You've got the number boards, and it just gives it that retro rider feel, but then also functionality. If you have got another half or a friend or someone that wants to jump on the back, you can do that. Touching on braking here, the brakes are phenomenal. I mean, for my riding, I have no complaints with the brakes whatsoever. Of course, you can adjust the ABS response with rider modes and the custom modes, but at no point did the ABS kick in. You don't have an adjustable brake lever or clutch for that matter either. but the brakes just work so nicely. That initial bite is just enough to slow you down, and if you really pull in, the indicators will flash and you start hammering on the brakes, and it feels responsive. If you're the type to brake into a corner, sort of trail brake in, you can do that on this bike, and it feels very rewarding when you get it right. But if you get it wrong, so make sure you know what you're doing with that first. But if you know what you're doing, and I sort of do, braking into a corner, trail braking, just getting the bike in nicely and then sitting in, taking a turn, just felt so rewarding every single time. Tank size is 14 litres. We did about 200 kilometres, and so I would not be able to say exactly what the fuel range is, but 14 litres for this bike is very good, and if you're just going to take it steady, that would be more than enough. Estoril, we went there today, and I was expecting a bit of a track day. Unfortunately it wasn't. It was more of a photo and video opportunity, but that wasn't a problem whatsoever because it's a legendary circuit to me. Really love that. The long straight, unfortunately we didn't get to go down because we stopped halfway to then turn around and do some photos and videos. But
our brief stint on Estoril's circuit gave a good idea of what this bike can really do when unleashed. Really backs up the thought that it has both style and substance.
You've got spin forged wheels here, 17 inches front and rear, and you've got the Bridgestone Battle Axe S23s, which are very good. They hold the heat well, they're very grippy, and you've got a lot of faith when you're tucking into a corner that you can really push and lean off the bike and it will respond nicely. Of course, the suspension is a lot to do with the response of the bike there as well, but the tyres are very nice. I mean, you're wondering, what are the negatives of this bike? I can't really say that there's too much. I mean, I'm quite a tall rider, 6'3", as I say, and my legs were starting to cramp up towards the end of the day, but you kind of expect that when you start off at 9 AM and you finish at 6 PM. That's a long day in the saddle. Of course, we'd had lunch and stuff like that. Other than that, I'm really struggling to point out any glaring emissions. I mean, there was a little bit of bubbling on the logo stickers here, but some of them have it, some of them don't. I'd imagine the final proper versions and production ready versions rather than these press test bikes will be absolutely fine. Other than that, I mean, just look at it, it's stunning. I really can't think of anything that's wrong with this bike whatsoever. So to answer my initial question, is this the retro racer that we were all dreaming of, hoping for and expecting when it was first unveiled by Yamaha? And I think it's a resounding yes. The TFT screen is lovely. The style overall is beautiful. Whether you go for this Marlboro white and red, which just invokes that heritage racing, or the really sleek and stylish grey and black version, you've basically got a very just capable bike here. Not only does it look good, it rides extremely well. And it's something that I've just had the best time today riding. Whether or not you're going to be riding it on track as a track day bike, I can't imagine you want to do something as beautiful as this. If you've been it, you'd be crying. Or if you're just going to be bimbling around, going to some bike shows, maybe like the Bike Shed, and turn up on this, people are going to be wandering over and asking all sorts of questions and wanting to know what you think of it, how it rides, what it's like, just everything. It's a real crowd pleaser, this bike. So yeah, it is a retro bike with that modern style, that modern electronics, assistance, and everything you need from the electronic side, 6-axis IMU and bits like that. That's all thrown in here, and the bike does an exceptional job. As I say, if you want my full thoughts, you're gonna have to go to lexhaminsurance.co.uk to read through the blog. Also on our social media, so Bike Matters on Instagram, you can check out the Lexham Insurance page on Facebook. We're all over the place, but if you want to find out more from the day, I'll upload everything I can where I can. Until then, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like, and comment down below what you think of this XSR900 GP, I'd really appreciate it. And if you've got any other questions that you want to throw into the comments, I'll answer them there. If not, subscribe and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.